Hi, everyone. Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rhonda Seelinger, and I'm the Customer Engagement Manager for iClicker. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today. Before we get started, I do have a couple quick housekeeping type items that I'd like to mention. First, we are recording the webinar, and definitely feel free to share the link with your colleagues. We are going to be sending the link within the next day or so after the broadcast. I also want to let you know that everyone is automatically muted, and we do that just to help us keep out background noise. That doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you, because we absolutely do. And how we communicate is primarily the chat or the questions features within the GoToMeeting platform, and I will be checking those throughout the presentation. And we've saved some time at the end for some Q&A. And with those things covered, I am very pleased to introduce Angela Nickoli of Ball State University, and she has prepared a great presentation on transitioning traditional lectures into more active learning classrooms. Thank you, Angela. I'm going to turn it to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Glad I could be with you today. Hopefully you learn a couple things, some tips and tricks to kind of integrate iClicker into your classroom. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get started, and we'll roll right into this. So let me give you a little bit of background. I am from Ball State University, and that is in Muncie, Indiana, and I tend to start a lot of my presentations with this because a lot of people don't know that we have a pretty famous alumni, and that is David Letterman. David Letterman's been extremely generous to Ball State University, and he actually has this very, very, very heavy and large plaque outside of one of his favorite classrooms here on campus, and actually it's just below my office. It's kind of cool, so I like to throw that out there. And students really enjoy walking by that and kind of looking at it, and he comes to campus quite a bit to talk with students and those sorts of things. So I wanted to throw that out there. So he's our famous alumni, so I always like to mention that, just to bring Ball State home. So a little things that I want to talk about in terms of iClicker. I just want to give a very brief background in terms of iClicker and Ball State University. iClicker has been on Ball State's campus for almost 10 years. In the spring of 2008 is when we started to hold our first workshops, and at that time I was 10 years into my a career here as an instructor in the criminal justice department, and I would teach the large introduction to criminal justice courses, and at that time they were around 150, 200, sometimes 230 students. So I was struggling to find a way to engage such a large class and to get feedback and to do something a little bit different. So I became one of the first faculty on campus to kind of buy into the iClicker program and to give it a try. Then in summer of 2008, Edna Ross from the University of Louisville, and if you have never met Edna, you have not lived. She is amazing. She is an outstanding teacher and is all about student voice. And when you listen to Edna, you really just feel empowered by her views of teaching, how she works with students, and just the things that faculty could be doing into the classroom. So she was extremely generous to come to our campus and work with us on integrating iClicker in our classrooms, and then in 2008 we pretty much launched. And so where we are now is we've got about a little over 1,000 contracted tenure track faculty. Between 18 and 20% of those are in fact iClicker users. Now, they may not be using at the same time. They may be using one semester and then maybe they're taking a break the next semester, just depending on their course load. So we estimate that about 1/3 of our student population uses iClicker and or Reef at some point. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're at. So it's been kind of an interesting road for us. Our student population right now is hovering at about 20,000. So we're okay. I mean, we're mid-size for Mid-American University, so that kind of gives you an idea of what we look like. The reason why we have, which is a large percentage of iClicker users, is that our COM 210 course, which funnels about 3,000 students a year into that course, uses iClicker. So chances of students having an iClicker sophomore, junior, senior are pretty high because they've needed to take 210. So again, just a little side note of where we are in terms of our own campus. So let's hop right into it. The reason why I wanted to show a little bit about the journey is early on, there were a lot of discussions about the support of iClicker. You know, on a campus, when you bring a new technology, there's always these back discussions behind the scenes of, well, who's going to support it, who's those sorts of things. So my approach has been that IT is an important part of this process. Now, IT are the ones that can really funnel the technical types of questions. It's been a little bit different here, and I'll talk to you about that here in a second. But they handle the nuts and bolts. Now, the question and how we kind of evolved is, what happens if things don't go the way that it should in the classroom? Prior to iClicker, I had used another system, and it was fairly reliable, but what IT never seems to understand it, and again, now that I'm in kind of an IT role, it's not that they don't get what it's like standing in front of the classroom and something isn't working the way you anticipate it working. It's that sometimes they may not be able to provide that immediate support. What I found, even in terms of my own experiences, is if something doesn't working when I'm standing in front of 35 students and I can't figure out how to get it to work, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, faculty are going to go one of two ways. Either they will never use it again, or they'll give it another shot. So our focus became, okay, we really need a faculty advocate, someone who knows what that's like in the classroom, to kind of address it right then and there, and to approach it not just from a nuts and bolts standpoint, but what do you do if by chance it doesn't work? What I found in terms of our own campus is that more often than not, it's not an iClicker issue. It's our computer issues that are in our classrooms. And so oftentimes my role has been, if this doesn't work for one reason or another, it's probably one of two things. Number one, it's just a small step we got to tweak, whereas they forgot to turn it on. Or I've been there before. I've started a lecture and I'm like, oh, here's this question, let's everyone answer, and I didn't put the toolbar up there. That's happened to me before. Or number two, it's been something on the computer system that needed to be fixed. So my role has been, if by chance it doesn't do what you think it's going to do, what do you do immediately after that? So it's been able to provide kind of a guidance as someone who's been in that position before, which I'm a huge advocate. If you are on a campus where it's really IT based, which again is important, you really need to have a faculty member or a core group of faculty who use iClicker, who can really serve as a mentor, as a support system to other faculty. Because faculty get it. We understand that. Again, nothing against IT, but we understand the classroom dynamics of what can work. So for campuses where you may not have that, think about doing it yourself. Think about stepping up and saying, hey, I'd be willing to take on this role. It's really been a game changer in terms of us for here on this campus, and just for me personally, because you meet so many outstanding people, and it's just great to have that network. Which leads into the second point of faculty support is crucial to faculty success. I don't think, in terms of iClicker, with my experience, you can't be successful without having that support system when you're using this form of technology. And a couple reasons means that way you can bounce ideas off of each other. You can call somebody, hey, I tried this the other day in class, it didn't work. What am I doing wrong? Faculty support is so crucial. IT is concerned about how does it work for you, where our primary concern is, why can it work for you? What are some things that you're currently doing in the classroom that could easily transition to iClicker? So I just can't stress it enough. If you've got someone on campus, have them champion, have them be the iClicker person, and just kind of form some of these groups and talk, train each other, communicate, collaborate. It is fantastic. I can't say enough about that. Which kind of leads into just a little bit here. What are some common myths? And again, I am probably teaching to the choir here, but the reason why I think it's important to cover some of these things is because when we get so embedded in using a specific technology in our classroom, we forget a lot of things. We become very comfortable. As faculty, we never want to be comfortable. We always want to be pushing the envelope. We always want to be answering these questions. We constantly want to be pushing ourselves to be the best that we can be in terms of what we do and what we know in terms of how our content works with this form of technology. So I'm going to throw this out there. We've probably heard some of these. Some of these you may not have heard. Some of them you probably hear a lot. But that using iClickers and/or Reef is technology overload. You're going to hear me say this a couple of times, but it depends on how you use it. If you use iClicker and Reef as the sole technology for only one purpose, but yet there's other things happening in the room. Let's say you're in an interactive learning space. Let's say you've got Twitter, you have Instagram, Snapchat, you've got this technology over here, you're using MediaSite. That could be true. But the question I would ask you is, how are you using iClicker? Are you using it for straight question and answers and then you're done? Or are you using it as a springboard to other activities? And we'll come back to that question too. This is one that I hear quite a bit. Students can cheat with their clickers. When we run a lot of our workshops here, and I encountered this in my introductory criminal justice courses, when you had the large amount of students and they can kind of hide the number of clickers that they have. My response has been, and this is difficult, and it took me a while to get there, do not mistake the fact that I did not come to this kind of resolution easily. I really, really, really struggled with it because as an instructor of a large classroom, I did not want to be okay with cheating, and don't get me wrong that I'm not. But I had to come to the conclusion that if students are going to cheat with iClickers, they're going to cheat anyway. They will find a way to do it. Now, there are some common blocks that you could do. You could make sure in your syllabus that you've got the academic dishonesty policy covered. You could talk about academic dishonesty in your class and what that means. You could maybe have a short academic dishonesty quiz using your iClickers. Those are some things that you could do to offset that, but I had to be okay with that. And you know, faculty here and I have been in some communications over this past couple weeks about maybe there's some policies that we can develop on this campus and some more solid protocols of what faculty could do. Because it is an issue and it can be an issue. But I think for you, it's kind of what can I do to let them know, hey, I consider this cheating. So those are some things to keep in mind, and you might have some ideas to share as well. It's a learning distraction. I go back to the first point. How do you use it? When iClicker first hit our campus, and for those universities who are looking at it and some faculty who are thinking about incorporating it, we get so excited about the technology, okay? And we come up with our questions and we come up with, oh, I can grab this quiz and take it off Blackboard or Canvas and put it into iClicker and I'm set to go. And you just feel so relieved because like, oh, this is fantastic. But we don't do anything with it. We run our questions and we move on. So in terms of a learning distraction, I'm not necessarily bought on that. I'm not necessarily sold on that because students are distracted by any number of things these days. If anything, I believe that these iClicker and Reef forces students to focus, taking something what they currently have and focus. But you know, that's one that's still out there, and that's one that's still at least being debated on this campus. I can only ask multiple choice true false questions. Well, if we know anything about Reef, we know that that has been a game changer. I cannot tell you how excited I've been that the mobile application now has target questions and has a little bit more flexibility in the short answer, which I think is just huge. Because after a while, we do get tired of asking the same multiple choice or true false questions. We want to ask something different, okay? The ones I have heard more frequently than not have been students don't like them. Again, I don't believe that. I don't think it's a matter of liking them. They don't like how you're using them, not the actual hardware itself. That gets to the fact that, you know, how often do you use it? If you're going to use iClickers or if you're going to use Reef, that gets to consistency. In some cases, students may be responding to the fact that they weren't used as consistently as they thought they were going to be, maybe a couple times a term. If you're going to use iClicker and Reef, you should use them consistently and often. This is probably not a good way to start, but I think the first semester that I started using iClickers in my classroom, I used them every day, and I started on the first day of class because I wanted students to understand that A, they needed to bring them, and B, that they were things that I was expecting them to know, and that they felt that it brought some value. Now, some faculty are leery of that. I say at least give it a try once a week, but make sure it's consistent, okay? Which leads me a little bit into the tricks to try, I refer this to, and I'll get to a couple that probably, I'm speaking to the choir here maybe. A lot of these things you might have done, but there might be some new things that you haven't seen before. Number one is use iClickers to push past the expert blind spot. And you're probably thinking, what is the expert blind spot? That's us. We are the experts, and oftentimes I think that as faculty, we make assumptions about what students may know, and they really don't know it. And maybe not know it in terms of content, but maybe know how to do something. I'll give you a real quick example. I was teaching an upper division course of students, it's been about 2 years ago now, who were getting ready to head into the internship. And part of their assignment was they needed to Google and give me the name of an agency where they wanted to do their internship. And after I explained the assignment, I'm thinking, okay, why don't you guys go ahead and get started, and I'll be here to answer questions. Before they started the assignment, one of the students asked, what do I Google? And I stopped for a second. I go, I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean, what do I Google? And their response was, I don't know what to type in the Google search bar. And to me, that struck me because I had assumed that by giving them assignment, search for XYZ, they would know how to search for XYZ. But they didn't know what to put in the box in terms of the exact words to pull up the search that they wanted to find. And so we could use iClicker to maybe hone in on just some basic types of things that we think, you know, I think they know what to do here, but let me ask them anyway. 1 or 2 questions, because I think that brings us back, that grounds us a little bit, because oftentimes as faculty we tend to stay up in the clouds and assume that our students know a lot, and they may not know what we think they know. So this could help us. 1 or 2 questions, start your class with it, and say, oh, okay, good. We've got this assignment, we're good, we can move on. So that's our expert blind spot, because we're the experts, and sometimes we don't necessarily see things the way we should see them. A second, tie your response feedback to goals and objectives and areas for improvement. This has been, and I'll refer to 2 pieces of work here that you might find helpful at the end, but tie your response feedback to goals and objectives. Always go back. Maybe you make a little blurb at the bottom of a question. This ties directly to goal A, B, C, D. Tie it back. Constantly make those connections for them, because we want students to understand why you are using this form of technology. And if the reason why you're using it is for these brief, quick assessments that tie into your goals and objectives, that gets you some good student buy-in. Okay? When appropriate, resist the single answer. I see nothing wrong with putting 3 or 4 answers up there that are the right ones. And then having students pair up after you ask the question to go through that process of why did you choose B, why did you choose C? Okay? It doesn't always have to be right or wrong. You can put multiple answers up there and have them pick the best one that they agree with. This is one, I'm going to be honest with you, I am considering trying this one. I have not used iClicker for student self-assessments, but I'm extremely interested in doing this come next spring. I think self-assessments tie directly into the first point of getting past the expert blind spot. This is something that I'm toying with. I'm reworking some wording just in terms of my own class of how I want this to work, but this would be great as a self-assessment for those of you that do that. Follow through with all of the steps of the peer instruction. The thing about peer instruction is oftentimes when we use iClicker for peer instruction, we only go through the first couple of steps of, okay, vote, now pair up, talk to your neighbor, vote again. But we don't follow up and now chat on why you changed your answer. Why did you do this? Why did you go from here to there after talking with your peer? Sometimes we stop. That second question should be leading into other types of dialogue that your students have with each other. Okay. All right, and student engagement through question responses. This is my absolute favorite technique, and if I can get this through in a class or 2 or 3 or 4 in a semester, I love it. I love to pose a question to the students and then have them provide me responses that serve as the voting responses in iClicker. I love that. Students love that. I think they feel a little bit more engaged in that, and that's just one of my favorite tips right there. So always remember, because I know we want to allot some time for question and answer, always remember, number 1, use the program as a tool, not a crutch for your classroom. When I started out using iClicker in these 101 and the entry-level courses, it was a crutch. I'm not going to lie. I used it primarily just for quizzing. I didn't think about the other ways that those responses and those things could be elevated into other types of activities, not just questioning. So what we've started to see now and how we're encouraging our faculty to use it is, yeah, absolutely, use it to get your short quizzes out of the way. But what are some ways that you can use iClicker to serve as a springboard into another type of interactive activity, whether it's peer instruction, whether it's group work, or flipping the classroom, which it's fantastic for. What are some ways to lead into other things? I think it's crucial at this point. Also, don't be afraid to go where students want to go. I think one of the hazards that we tend to get into is we are so content driven. The discipline that I teach, and when I taught 101, I had to be content driven. I had 13 chapters I needed to get through in 16 weeks. So how did I let go of some of that content and open up the conversations and go where the students wanted to go? Now, oftentimes you will have it completely divert, but what you're going to find is those are the class periods that students remember. Those are the ones that they learn from the most when they are engaging with each other, they're learning from each other, and you've kind of let go of the reins a little bit. Okay? And I've been telling faculty about the past 6 months, letting go of the content is okay. Don't be afraid to do that. Have some trust in them. Have some trust, and I think you'll feel a little bit better in terms of using this form of technology. After each question, ask yourself, how can I push them further? How can we go just beyond this multiple choice? Is there a topic? Is there a hot button issue that we can now tag this to? How can I push them further? How can the active learning continue? How can I move this into a discussion forum on Blackboard or a discussion forum on Canvas? Sorry, those are the only 2 LMSs I'm familiar with right now. But how can we go further? That should be the question that you ask yourself every time you poll. Okay. There are a couple things that I referred to throughout the presentation. I referred to these 2 texts here. If I was part of a faculty book club this summer, and these are actually the 2 texts the 2 books that we read, and I love them. I cannot tell you enough how these 2 things have been a game changer for me in terms of a faculty member. And I've been teaching for 20 years. And I always just find it interesting to kind of refresh, reboot, and just get a whole different perspective on teaching. These are fantastic texts. I also put a link up here, and I know that you don't have access to it, but that's the actual name of the link. It's called Turn to Your Neighbor, the official peer instruction blog. They've got they haven't done any updating lately, but they've got a couple good things on flipped classrooms. They've got a great 2-minute video on peer instruction and the various steps that you should do. So those would be the 3 things that I would really recommend. Again, it's never too late for us as seasoned faculty to revisit why we got into what we do and what engaged us and what excited us about teaching. And I can't say enough about these 2 books. So if you can get your hands on them, I would strongly encourage that you do so. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you so much. Now is a great time if you want to type in any questions, or if you if you have any comments to share, that's great. I'll be monitoring those. I do have a couple already, but I wanted to post to you, Angela. Is there a particular kind of activity that you've tried that gets the best student responses, or that really gets them going?
Oh, it would definitely be the student engagement one with the responses. And I actually did, because I was hoping somebody would ask, because I love this. I just love this technique. So what I do here, and I'm going to go ahead and go to that slide. What I do is, again, let me preface this. I teach criminal justice. So for those of you who are looking at the slide as if, oh my, what does she do? I teach criminal justice, and this particular question that I ask is how I would begin our theory section. So what I do here is I put up the question, okay? And again, this could be anything. I really believe this could work in any discipline. So I put up the question, okay? And then I let students read it. I give them some chances to think about it, and then I ask them, okay, why did she kill her sister? And then, you know, you're going to get a ton of responses. And this is when I'll play it off as if I didn't plan for this, but I actually did. I might have another slide here that I put at the that follows. It says, okay, let me go ahead and type up these responses. If you don't mind, I'll get out of that now. Oh, there we go. Let me try and make that a little bit bigger there. There we go. So I might go ahead and say, okay, John, why do you think she killed her sister? And I'd say, you know, because her mother told her to, or whatever that may be. So I will go around the room. Now, the key is that if you choose to do this, you have to ask, at least get one student to tell you the right answer. But you're playing it off as if you didn't think that answer was going to come up anyway. So I will go through, she loved the boyfriend, the guy, blah, blah, blah. See, don't know, this is weird, it's freaking me out, that sort of thing. So I'm going to go through, and then I would pose this then and say, okay, go ahead and vote. Now that we've kind of taken responses of this classroom, what do you guys think? Of the best responses that we've had, what's your favorite? But I always make sure someone has given me the correct response. And the problem is, I may have to ask here. I may have to keep asking for Susie and Jimmy and Billy and Bob to give me their responses until I get the one. I'm hoping I get the one around B or C. But I will kind of hold out and keep going and say, oh, no, that sounds too much like this or too much like that. Students love this. And the reason why is they feel they have bought into the question and they're vested in this, that they contributed, that they want to see their answer get up there, and they want to see how many people thought their answer was the top one. This is a fun technique. It really is. If you have the material to do that, where it's just a kind of a fun question and you want to gauge it and you want to wake up. And the thing is, I would always ask this at the end of class. Because I taught an hour and 15 minutes and I wanted to wake them up. So this worked.
Great. Another question that came in is around, does Ball State have any data that correlates, you know, active learning approaches with higher course evaluations? Do you track that kind of stuff?
We do and we don't. There is, that sounded so vague. We do in what we call our interactive learning spaces. Here on Ball State's campus, we have 5 classrooms that have been designated as interactive learning spaces. And the instructors in those classrooms that teach in those spaces are evaluated, and their students are evaluated on their experiences in the space. And what we have seen is that students do enjoy the spaces more. They enjoy the flexibility that the space affords them. There's a lot of technology in those rooms, so the students respond on that as well. And we have seen slightly higher evals, but I don't know if it's a true reflection of the teaching happening in that room. That's something that we're still trying to narrow down and probably come up with different types of surveys to gauge that information.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now is not the time to be shy. If there's any other questions, please type them in, or any comments you want to make. I did have someone ask about the recording, and we are recording this, and we will send it sometime after the broadcast, so be on the lookout for your email. It's going to go to everybody who had registered for the event. All right, I think we're good then. I want to thank everyone once again for joining us. And Angela, thank you so much for putting together a great presentation on active learning in the classroom and some strategies. We really appreciate it. And if anyone needs or has any questions, you can respond to the emails that we send out, and we're happy to follow up and engage with you further.
Yeah, and feel free to contact me too. I mean, you can find me on Ball State's websites. If you just want to have a question about how we did some things here in terms of faculty development and making those transitions, you can shoot me an email as well.
Great. All right. Thank you so much. That will end the broadcast. And once again, thank you. And I hope all of you go on to have a great rest of your day.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.